I say people to have firm ground to stand on when they have that continuity to take a leap into the unknown world of change. And if I have that firm footing, I've got a lot more confidence, a lot more belief that we're going to be successful in this. And that helps with anxiety. It helps people increase the believability index, I call it, of the work that they're doing around change.
I'm hearing so many wonderful things there, Jake, and I want to play some of them back to you in a summary form. And then I've got a question at the end that I'd like your help with. So the first one was acknowledge the pain. So if you're in a change-weary organization, once again, people want to be heard. So do take the time to acknowledge that, yeah, we've had a lot of change efforts in the past. We acknowledge that it's a difficult thing to go through, etc. I think that's really important to do so. Then I heard you talking about trying to change too many things at once. And that's where some of the lack of success comes in as well. And that if organizations could reduce that number down to a more manageable approach, then it also maybe becomes a bit more tangible, that people feel like, oh, yeah, we could do that. And they start feeling some positivity towards a lower number of things to change. Then when you speak about paying attention to continuity, what I was hearing is making sure that you don't change the things that don't need to be changed. So if there are some things that do stick, then keep doing some of those things. They're part of who your company is and probably part of successes that you've had as a company up until that point. The bit I want to test is on that pay attention to continuity. What I was picking up in your book is if you said to say people, the same people that are change weary, if you said to them and go, okay, no problems, we're just going to not change anything. We're just going to keep the status quo. Those people would become very uncomfortable with that as well. Because I'm sure that in any company, there's always some things that people are not happy with. So if you put it back to them and said, okay, right, business as usual, just continuity, those same people will then challenge you back and say, well, hang on a second. We said we were change weary.
Right. Not so fast.
Oh, not so fast. We do want to change. Am I right?
Yeah. And I think that, it comes from our desire to see the whole picture. And if you're only dealing with change, then you're missing a lot of pieces of that jigsaw puzzle. And same thing, if you're only dealing with continuity, then you're also missing pieces. There was a guy, and I wrote this up in the book, a guy named Joe. Honest, his name was Joe. And he stood outside our meeting room for the entire morning of this meeting around change. And we were dealing with a new mission and vision and values and culture. And I mean, it was a massive project. And he stood with 1 foot in the door and 1 foot out of the door the whole morning. I mean, if you want to talk about somebody on the fence, this literally, physically was a manifestation of somebody on the fence. And what we said was, everybody gets to make their own choice in here. So we asked Joe to sit down out of, basic manners. And he said, no, I'm fine. So we left him. And he didn't want to participate in the conversations. And that was okay too. He gets to make his own choice, because otherwise somebody's jumping through a hoop because they told him they had to. My manager said I had to come and participate. And that's no way to get engagement. Well, Joe sat down at lunch next to me and he said, this is different. And I said, what's different? And he said, this meeting's different. And I said, oh, what's different about it? And he said, well, we're here talking about what needs to change. And before, we used to get told what was going to change. And he said, look, I'm not an idiot. I understand competition is coming. And he said, it's my job as well as the next guy's that's on the line. He said, so I'm not arguing that things don't have to be different here. I know they have to be different. He said, but how they get to be different is what I care about. And I have been told for 25 years in my career what I'm supposed to be doing here. And he said, this is the first time that I've sat in one of these meetings where somebody's asked questions instead of had answers, and looked to us to be able to answer those questions. And he said, that's a whole different deal. He said, count me in for the afternoon. I'm going to sit right here next to you. I've got my seat, and I'm not going to stand in the doorway anymore, because I'm not going to get bowled over by this, and I'm going to have my say. And those are the kind of experiences where, I step back and I smile and I say, I remember Joe. I remember exactly what he looks like, just like that woman in Buffalo. I know exactly what he looks like and exactly where he was standing in that doorway. And he made a different choice. But at the end of the day, Mick, you see, for me, the magic is he made a different choice. He made an informed choice based on real information that was shared with him. And then of his own volition, his own choice, he sat down at that table. He ended up being one of the zealots, one of the champions for this effort, and actually organized a group of champions throughout the whole company and made a video that went out to the whole company asking people to join him on this team. Well, this was not the kind of guy that you would have expected to do that when he had one foot in the room and one foot out that morning.
What an amazing metaphor. And that visual is strongly in my head now as well. This picture of someone one foot in the door, one foot out of the door. And it's almost like a business version of art imitating life.
Exactly.
You see. Tell us a little bit more about the concept that you said before about day job, because I think that one comes up as a lot as well. So people that have got their day job and then they're also on the change project, and it's seeing a few different things. How do you break that one?
Right. So again, I'm going to come back to this paradigm, and how we choose to see the world is a lot of how we experience the world. So it is so typical for organizations and the people in them to have their day job and then this extra work, right? And the problem ends up being you have too much on your plate. And, I've heard this in every organization I've ever worked, that people have too much on their plate. And what they're saying is, I don't have the time or the energy to be able to take more on. And, in a lot of ways, that's reasonable. Now, what I developed was this lever that's called change work as part of daily work. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, you can't use this lever in every situation all the time. But when you can, it's solid gold. So here's a story of a client that I worked with where change work became part of daily work. I was working with the senior executive team, and of all things that they were frustrated by, one of them was their own meetings. And so we set up a little subgroup to work on their meeting structure. And that group came back. Now, I was a member of that group too, so some of this was my influence and suggestions, but they came back and they said, look, every meeting has to have a purpose and outcomes. And it's a results orientation that we're going to take to these meetings. Now, they were talking about a culture change around becoming a results oriented company. So the purpose and outcomes, the senior leader said, yeah, and if nobody if nobody has a purpose and outcomes to their meeting 24 hours before the meeting, nobody has to go. You don't have to show up to a meeting with no purpose and outcomes. Why would we waste our time now that we know that we're results oriented? So the first two meetings after this rule got put in place, people didn't send purpose and outcomes. And what they found was nobody at their meetings. So it was a real wake-up call to say, let's start doing this. Well, in the executive team, they started to have purpose and outcomes for every meeting. And then the leaders would go back to their functions and they would have purpose and outcomes for all their meetings. And then their people would start having purpose and outcomes for all their meetings, and all their projects had a purpose and outcomes. A purpose answers, why are we doing this in the first place? And the outcomes are, how are we going to measure success? What are the deliverables that we want? Well, this caught fire in a positive way in the organization, so that when people were in the hallway, you'd walk by and somebody'd say, I'm going to be doing X, Y, Z. And somebody else would say, well, what's the purpose that you're trying to accomplish by doing X, Y, Z, right? So in the organization, language-wise and behaviorally, they became a more results-oriented organization. And this is a great example of making change work part of daily work. It didn't take any more time. There was no special task force. There was no special meeting. This was part of their daily work, and they changed it. And it became something where a lever alone, just doing it without a formal change effort, brought about a cultural shift in the entire organization. And so when I talk about this notion of making change work part of daily work, you see these opportunities for people to start behaving differently. I had one client who did a whole team building effort over the course of 3 months with her team with no offsite. Well, they had weekly staff meetings, so they just set aside part of the meeting they were already going to have, and they did some team building as part of that work. And so they never had to go off site. They were building their team as they were doing daily work.
You're also talking a lot here about making choices, and making choices that are around the purpose of the business, I think. So in this case, you're talking about pivoting to a result-oriented organization, and then making sure that the actions match that. And I want to tie that to what you said about day job and people being busy. If we are making smarter choices about what we do, but more importantly, what we don't do, then you can build this in. You can build in the time needed to focus on change as part of your day job instead of it being separate. There's a lot of initiatives going around with people wanting to try to achieve work-life balance. As an example, I want to test this idea with you, Jake. And companies will put out policies that are trying to drive work-life balance without taking some of the pressure off. So the only way that you can really achieve work-life balance, if there's also some kind of pressure relief about things that people don't have to do, and being more selective about what you do and don't do, so that you can then drive that. So you've got to be able to create space for people to be able to do this. Otherwise, it is day job and change job, right?
Right.
If they don't have enough hours in the day, there's no other way to do that. So I like what you were saying there about purpose and outcome of meetings, because what it was driving, the behavior I see it was driving, is being more selective about what people do and don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And along with that, Mick, and this is the sort of stuff that you get for free, right? You don't have to pay any more for this, but you get focus, you get alignment, you get engagement. There's a guy, Stuart Kaufman, who did work in the new sciences, and he has a saying, and I put this into the book. He has a saying that says, the universe gives you order for free. And what he was saying is that the universe on its own is an organized entity. And that when we interact with it, how we can see it, if we can see the implicit order that's there, even the weeds in my front lawn, right, are part of nature, and they're part of the natural ecosystem. So if you get order for free, it means that it's already there. We just need to recognize it. Well, the things that we're talking about with alignment, with energy, with focus. It's like if you have that results-oriented organization, all the rest of this stuff comes without even have to pay a penny for it. You just get that because, like you're saying, you start to decide what not to do. And people have more time freed up to be able to do what they need to be doing. And so now we've got everybody in an organization doing the work that they need to be doing. It's like it's an unstoppable force. I mean, the kind of organizations that get that level of clarity and that level of alignment, they're the ones where their customers are thrilled, their retention rates for employees are through the roof. I mean, it's a very simple concept, but again, you've got to adopt that paradigm and you've got to be committed to it because it's going to feel uncomfortable in the beginning. It's not a normal act that most organizations have down pat. And so as you start getting into these new behaviors, you've got to also give yourself a little grace to be able to try things, not get it quite right. There's a forgiveness factor that comes along with trying new behaviors if everybody's trying them. If you're the one, Mick, trying to do things differently and screw up, that's your mistake. But if the two of us are trying to do something different and we screw up, now it became our mistake. And it's a lot easier to learn from our mistake than it is for you to learn from your mistake when I've got my finger pointed at you.
That's a wonderful analogy there, Jake, and bringing people together in that way. Let's talk about incentives. A lot of companies attempt to drive change through incentivization with a very hit and miss result. What's your experience with this?
I think, Mick, this is one of those yes and answers. That when there's an either or paradigm that people get into where it's like binary, like either you do it or you don't. And either it's right or it's wrong. And I think that there are many different forms of incentive that support people in making good choices. And so, I've seen people get acknowledged with President's Awards. I've seen people get acknowledged with cash bonuses. I've seen people get acknowledged literally in front of their peers with a thank you from the CEO. I've seen people acknowledged with opportunities to do new work without even being promoted, but they get an opportunity to do some other work that they wouldn't have been able to before. People have a self-satisfaction. I know I do. The self-satisfaction when you're able to make a contribution that makes a difference, that's another kind of gratification, right? That's another kind of reward. And a lot of these don't cost money. I mean, there's all kinds of research that says that the intrinsic rewards or the ones that I give myself are much more valuable than the ones that are extrinsic or that come from the outside. But I think it's a yes and, because I think that the more ways that we can reward people for doing things well, that support the organization, that support their teammates. One of the things that I'm a deep believer in is that people themselves know what they experience as a reward. That even, oh my God, asking people, what could we do that would feel rewarding for you right now? I mean, we had one event. This was in a county in Kansas in the United States, and we were working late and we were doing one of these turnarounds. And so it was like basically dinner time, right? And we said to it's 5 o'clock, not quite dinner time, but it was nearly dinner time. And we said to these people, what would feel like fun right now? And they were working their tails off. And they looked at us and they said, ice cream. And we said, great. So we sent out a crew to the local grocery store, got all kinds of ice cream. It was like you were a small child again. You could get the fudge bar, you could get the ice cream bar, you could get the push up, the bomb pop, whatever it was that you wanted. And we brought this stuff in, and the cheer that went up from this crowd was deafening. And then everybody started to come get their ice cream, different kinds, and they went back to work at their tables. Well, we would have never guessed that ice cream was going to be that big a difference maker. But like, it was unbelievable. They all knew that they wanted ice cream. There was like this groundswell. And so we were able to do that reward. Now, was that in the comp system? I don't think so. But was it in the reward system? Well, they knew best what was going to feel rewarding at that time. And so asking people is a key piece of this puzzle. And we don't have to guess. It doesn't have to be difficult. People know best what they need. And if we ask them and then are willing to respond, I think it's a huge win, bigger than anything else we could do.
This is like the perfect illustration of transitioning from the golden rule to the platinum rule. So,
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've heard that one in the last week a few times where people are, do as I would have done unto myself. And I'm like, always the hair goes up in the back of my neck because I'm like, well, that's good for you, but is it really good for them?
yeah. So treat other people the way they want to be treated.
Amen.
And the question that people often ask, oh, but how would I know? Here's an idea. Ask them.
Exactly. Exactly.
You could have spent, not to get fiscal about it, but you could have spent lots of money on some other reward when what they wanted was ice cream.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always, I mean, to me, it's so often surprising what it is that people actually want. Even when I help somebody, my first mentor said, help is usually helpful when it's asked for. And so you can ask people what they need for support, and you can be absolutely stunned because it's not what you would need. But boy, it sure helps that person. And it's like often so much easier than what you were going to do and get convoluted and try and figure. It's like, no, have a conversation. They're intelligent people. They know the answer, and give them space. Have them tell you, and then most importantly, act on it.
You do need to deliver. That's the other thing. If you're going to go through this, you need to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. Let's circle all the way back to the start of our conversation, Jake. One of your levers is find opportunities for people to make a meaningful difference. So to crescendo this all up and all of this change effort, how do we make sure that that meaningful difference is front and center in all of this?
Yeah, so I think one really important thing is to draw circles that include people in change work. That the larger the team that you have, the bigger difference they can make. And again, what's meaningful to me and what's meaningful to you can be two very different things. So again, having the conversation and asking somebody, what will make a difference for you? What will it be that you can do uniquely? We wrote this book, You Don't Have to Do It Alone. And one of the chapters was, how do you invite people? And the most powerful way to invite somebody into a process or into a change effort is to do it personally. Is to say, Mick, you know what? You ask really good questions. And because of those questions, we need that in our team to be able to make good decisions. And so we want you to join the team, and we want you to really make sure that you feel like you've got room and space to be able to ask those questions. Because if we don't get those, we're all missing out. Not only are you missing out on making a meaningful difference, but we're all missing out on you not making a meaningful difference. And to that, we all suffer. And so I think that people being asked what's meaningful to them, and then asking other people what they can contribute, what other people can contribute that they'll find meaningful. Because there's two sides to this equation. One of them is me on my own, and where do I believe I can make my best contribution, but also where do others think I can make my best contribution? Because often it's the things that are like, this is no problem. I mean, you want creativity and you're asking Jake Jacobs? Come on. You want ideas? This is simple, right? Why are we even bothering with the conversation? Because that's easy to me, but that doesn't mean it's not valuable to somebody else. I am sure, Mick, you have heard a lot of times that your listening and your questions are a gift. And so for you, it may just be what you do during the podcast, but for the teams that you're on, it's pure gold. And so making sure that you listen to what other people value about you and what you value about yourself. There are a lot of these both and situations we've been talking about, and they come from two sides of the same equation. It's like, how do you get the best team? Everybody brings their best to the team, and there's wants and offers. So what is it that I want from you to be able to bring my best? And that's something that you can contribute as well.
I love everything you've just said, Jake. It's one of the things I really believe is that every person on the planet has got their individual superpower. And one of the things that people really struggle with is to recognize that they have that power that other people do not have, and they appreciate it. So you may be the very best at something and you don't realize it. And you may not realize that the value that it brings to the greater good and the greater collective team. So really, and sometimes it takes someone else to point it out for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Often. There was an entrepreneur's course, Mick, I took years ago, and they talked about your unique ability. So your unique ability is where these three things meet. One, you love to do it. So what you love to do, and you do it well, right? I mean, I can love to do a lot of things and be lousy at them. So that is not my unique ability. So I got to love it. I got to do it well, and other people have to value it highly. When you put those three together, that's a unique ability. That's something that is a superpower. Other people value it, and it's easy. So some of these superpowers are so easy that we just do them getting out of bed in the morning. We don't even think of them as anything special, and yet other people can stand in awe of us and go, how did they just do that? Well, asking people what your superpower is may be uncomfortable. So maybe you say, what are the things I do that really contribute to the team? And get a list of them, and actually don't be shy about it, but get that list and then look at them and say, well, which of these do I really love to do? Because I may be doing some things that, don't get me out of bed in the morning. Great. Still make those contributions. But the things that you love to do, find opportunities to do those more and more. And not only will your life be better because you'll be doing stuff that you love, but every team that you join will have the benefit of those superpowers. And, watch out for the teams that you're on, because those superpowers are they make a huge difference in the performance of a team.
One of the things I think people should maybe think about and give this a try is you need techniques to uncover those. Give people a platform to tell their story and to help them uncover themselves what their superpower is. But then collectively as a team, you're going to have these moments of people looking at each other and going, oh, I had no idea that Sarah was good at blah, blah, blah. And you're going to discover so much more about each other, and then find out if these superpowers that everyone has are complementary to each other. And I almost guarantee that they will be, if you can find the way to put the pieces of the jigsaw together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've got to ask you the question now, Jake, right on the spot. What's your superpower?
My superpower, which is I totally love to do this. Other people have told me that they value it highly. And I will say, with all modesty, I do it super well, is this immediate impact based on creativity. So you can give me any situation. And Mick, you and I talked about this, I think, before we started, where in all my keynotes, I start this clock running with 5 minutes, and I have the levers available to me, and the person has a situation they're trying to improve, and that clock ticks down. And in 5 minutes, I can take those levers, that person's situation and help them get to a better place. And so that immediate impact is a piece of it. And then creativity about how to get there is a second piece of the puzzle for me.
I can clearly see that. And I can't wait to see the video of you doing this rapid fire round thing that you do at the conferences. That sounds awesome. I'm going to return serve here now, and I'm going to say, what is my unique ability? I'm going to use the criteria that you use, Jake. I love golf. I'm lousy at golf.
Yeah.
I love tennis. I'm lousy at tennis. I enjoy it, but I'm lousy at tennis. I love listening to people, and I've loved listening to you today, Jake. I do think I'm good at listening to people, and I do think that people find that to be value adding. So this has been such an amazing conversation listening to you, Jake. And it's what drives me to do this podcast, is to find people like you and collect diverse voices and opinions and knowledge, and to try to share it with people so that they can look to improve their own leadership skills. So thank you so much for everything that you've shared today. I'd like to go into our own rapid fire round now of a few questions to draw us to a close. So you're an accomplished author, multiple books. What's your favorite book or book that's changed your life?
I liked Ralph Waldo Emerson on Walden Pond. And I like that one because I remember reading it, as a younger man. And he says when it's time for him to leave, he left for the same reason that he came. He was curious and he wanted to learn. And so he had spent his time on Walden Pond doing what he wanted to do, to learn, to expand his thinking and to have a respite from whatever the everyday noise was in his environment. And so he said, and I left for the same reason for which I came. And very simple, very clear. I loved that his answer was the same one on the way in as it was on the way out.
Great message there. What about your favorite quote?
This one comes from Thomas Jefferson. It was September 4th, 1812. And he said, if we think the people of the society not enlightened enough to exercise their discretion in a wholesome way, our job is to inform them, not take it away.
Oh, wow. I can think of so many events in the world right now where that applies. Oh, wow. Okay. Next one will be challenging, I think. Let's see. You've been in this game for 30 years without showing your age too much. Have you seen any generational change around your business of organizational change? Are we seeing any shift as we move from baby boomers to Gen X to Gen Y to Gen Z or Gen Z in the US? Are you seeing any generational change about attitudes towards change?
Yeah, I think there are, and I think that they're significant. I think one thing that's changed is people are much more interested in it. I mean, I think that if we go back generations, there was less change. And if we play it through to today, there's less desire for change. But if you get to Gen Z and millennials, change has been part of their everyday life, and substantial change. I mean, you just look at technological change, you look at the change in communications, you take a look at the change in information. I mean, I was growing up, the World Book Encyclopedia was on our shelves, right? And now it's like literally I find myself, anything that I want to know, I'm on my phone and I find it out. So I think that the amount of change and the welcoming of change is much higher. I also think that the demands that people have of work, what their expectation is of a good day, is way different. And it's much higher. So, whereas I may have in past generations been satisfied with a paycheck and a pension, right? Now it's like, no, I need to be engaged. I need to be have my voice heard in the direction of this organization. I need to have influence. I need to be cared about as a human being. I mean, all of these things that before, I'm not saying we didn't have the needs, but they weren't expressed. And they weren't things that people would talk about being dissatisfied with because everybody, it was all vanilla. Everybody had the same thing where you got a paycheck and a pension, and that, I'm good. I'll find my joy somewhere else. I'm not going to find it at work. The other thing I think is really different is that people themselves are changing so often that it's become part of the ethos. It's been part of society. And by that, I mean, there are these studies about how many jobs somebody's going to hold in a lifetime. And, one or two, one was what the answer used to be, right? And now you find, well, how many jobs are people having? You're going to have a dozen jobs in the course of your lifetime. And even if I look at my own, I've done the same thing, Mick, but I've done it in 7 different places. And I'll say I'm 58, so already I'm behind the 8 ball in terms of how many. Will I get to a dozen or not? I don't know, but just the nature of what life is like today is changes embedded in it much more than it ever used to be. And so I think that our ability as organizations to change ought to, right, ought to increase commensurately. And so I think that flexible organizations and, people talking about their work hours and where they work and how they work and with whom they work, all of that is a lot more up for grabs. And I think for the better. I think that we're healthier organizations, we're more resilient organizations, we can meet more people's needs, however diverse those might be. All of that is for the better. And yes, I work in the world of change, so I may have a bit of a bias, but I think that, any organism on the planet that's more adaptive to its environment is going to be healthier. And so if we are those organisms and we're more adaptive to what change is, and our organizations get seen as living systems, all of that is for the better.
Mm. There's so many things that resonate with me there, Jake, and I'll do my best to play back some of it and add a little bit of flavor and see what you think. It was interesting what you said about whether some of it has been technologically enabled as well, some of that change. And I will pick millennials just as my example. So millennials do have different, I'll give an example, learning preferences compared to generations before them. So they love collaborative learning. They like to learn socially. They like micro learning. They like gamification, things like this. And some of those things maybe were not technologically enabled for previous generations like you and I. The next part about job hopping or having multiple careers, multiple jobs, etc. Part of that, I think, is mindset. And I think part of it is related to being less materialistic, because the dream is no longer necessarily the house and the car and all this kind of stuff.
2.5 children.
Yeah, I think that because that's changing, the burden of debt is not there as much. So previous generations really required long-term job security because they had mortgages to pay, they had certain materialistic lifestyles to maintain. Millennials are more about experiences. And if they're not enjoying the experience at company A, they'll leave and they'll look for company B. And the final one is, I think that millennials, although this has always been there, it's now amplified. They're that meaningful purpose, working for a company that has a very clear vision and purpose and a meaningful purpose is far more important to them than previous generations, including all the way through to impacts on societal issues like.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And being able to work for an organization that you're proud of,
Mm,
what they stand for, and how they do business, and how they treat the planet, and how they treat diverse people. All of that is, I think, a key determinant on where people are going to clock in and clock out.
100%. All right, final two questions, Jake. What's the one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were 20?
Oh, Lord. Well, I don't know how much time we've got, Mick, but I think the thing that I wish that I had have known is it's all going to be okay.
Mm,
That the number of things that I used to worry about, and I think of myself as a relatively easygoing person, but the number of things that I used to tie myself up in knots over in terms of my own life or my clients, or my family and significant other, and all these things that used to be, it's like, somebody was in a session I was in earlier in the week, and she was talking about all of these issues that she had taking over as a new supervisor. And I said, everybody was giving her advice, and I stood up and I said to her, I said, nobody cares about this as much as you do. So you're not nearly as important in these people's lives as you think you are. And so I think that kind of attitude that goes, my first mentor used to say, what you are doing is the most important thing in the world. And at the same time, it doesn't matter at all. And I think that, remembering that doesn't matter at all, it's like I could get very, very engaged and passionate about what I believe. And I think that I sometimes would forget that, life's going to go on. It's going to be good. The world will be all right. And I can make my own contribution to it, but that's what I can do, my own contribution.
mm-hmm. Great advice, and helps people keep things in perspective. I like that a lot. And the final question, I'm sure many of our audience have been enthralled as I am and learnt so much from this session. If people want to learn more, Jake, how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I think the easiest way for people to reach out is via my website, which is jakejacobsconsulting.com. And the other thing on there, Mick, that I encourage them to download is an ebook that I developed called 27 Ways to Achieve Faster, Easier, Better Results Immediately. So I talked about this immediate impact being one of my superpowers. And what I did is there are 8 of these levers. We've talked about a number of them. But what I did for each lever is I stepped back and I said, what are the simplest things that somebody could do to gain the benefits of this lever immediately? And then had 3 or 4 ideas for each of these levers that people could go out and try. And I mean, like, set the ebook down and go do it. So one example of this is find somebody who's resisting the change that you're trying to create. Put the ebook down, go find this person and say, could you say more about why this is difficult for you? Like, tell me more about what's going on for you about this change. And then with that person, see how you can address that issue. Because sometimes it's just as simple as asking. And that's just one of 27 different things that you can do. But what I like about this is they all are about paradigm shifts. This is not about going and asking for more budget. This is about going and opening your mind to new possibilities and then acting on those new possibilities, and consider it an experiment. If it's not your style to do some of these 27 ways, and it may not be, then just chalk it up to an experiment and see, well, how's this one going to work? And get into the I wonder space if this might be helpful. And you can even go up to somebody and say, look, I'm just trying this for the first time. I don't know how it's going to work. let me ask you this question. And it gives you permission. That the person is not going to give you a hard time if you start with, I've never tried this before and I'd like to give it a shot. Would you mind if I did this work with you? People are always want to help. So if you go up with that kind of an attitude, you're going to find people being helpful to you and supporting you in trying to do business in new ways, whatever that might be for you.
I really like that statement that you made about put the ebook down and go do it. Reading about change doesn't implement change. Implementing change implements change.
No.
Yeah, well done, Jake. And I will be putting in the show notes the links that you can get access to Jake and jakejacobsconsulting.com and some of the different things that we've discussed on today's show. Please do go ahead and download that ebook. It sounds very implementable and something that all of you will get some benefit from. There's also details on his website about the different programs and services that Jake's organisation provides, and also links to enable you to buy the book. Well, I should say books, because there's multiple books. But to talk briefly about leverage change, I've read it. So a great book. It covers a lot of the territory that we've discussed in today's interview in more detail, and gives it in a way that are 8 very practical ways to achieve faster, easier, better results when you're looking to implement change. So thank you so much, Jake. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned so much from you today, and I know that our audience will as well. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, my joy, Mick. Thank you.